Welcome back to Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast with your host, Dr.Toni G. Alvarado. I am so excited to welcome you to the February series of the Harmonize Your Life podcast. We've just come off of a hiatus where we reflected over the last 3 years of this podcast. We are celebrating the third year of the Harmonize Your Life podcast, and we did so in the month of January by looking over and reviewing and reflecting on our most listened to or viewed episode from year 2020, 2021, and 2022. And then we ended the month with a panel discussion from some of our previous podcast guests from those previous years. We did that on Monday, January 30th. And it was just a wonderful time. We did a panel discussion there, and it is archived on our YouTube channel. So I invite you to go back and listen to our first podcast talk back of the year 2023. But today we are starting a new series, a new set of podcast episodes with a wonderful guest who's going to help us kick off this new season of the Harmonize Your Life podcast. So I want you to get ready for a very juicy conversation today with our guest who's going to be in our studio in just a moment right after this. All right, welcome. So our guest today is none other than Debrena Jackson Gandy. Let me give you a little bit of her information about her. Debrena is a thought leader, Renaissance woman, a trailblazer in the area of creating and living deeply joyful and fulfilling life. With the national release of her best-selling book, Sacred Pampering Principles, nearly 25 years ago, she ushered self-care into the vernacular of Black women and took it a step further to introduce us to the concept of sacred self-care. Decades later, teaching, guiding, coaching, and mentoring women in how to create and live juicy, sacred self-caring lives through her courses, programs, elite retreats, Zoominars, and her new membership experience is still at the center of her body of work. Sacred self-care takes us beyond self-care of the body and mind to the tridimensional care of the whole woman, mind, body, and spirit. Debrena is a best-selling, nationally published author of 3 books, president of a successful 25-year personal and business development company, a juicy wife, mother of 3 young adult daughters, a world traveler. She's the founder of Love Academy and also of her former signature program, Juicy Woman University. She's creative. She's the creator of her new membership experience, the Sacred Society Life Lab, a highly effective love relationship mentor and coach, and has been a featured guest on national TV shows such as CNN, CNN Live, C-SPAN, and Sister Circle, on regional TV shows such as Good Day New York, Good Morning Texas, Good Day DC, locally on King 5's New Day Northwest, and Portland's Afternoon Live, and over 55 radio and podcast shows. In addition, she's been featured in magazines such as Essence, Ebony, Oprah's O, and Woman's Day. Her topic today, as we will be discussing, will be sacred self-care and juicy relationships. Sacred self-care and juicy relationships. Welcome, Debrena.
Hello, hello, hello. So good to be on your podcast. Congratulations, 3 years.
Thank you.
Love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Listen, I am so, I've had you come to the Self-Care Network and greet the women there. And we're still, to this day, excited about what we got when you came into Zoom with us during tea time with Dr.Toni.
All right.
And I'm just so glad to have you here with us today, finally to get you on the podcast. So all is well over in Portland area?
Seattle.
Well, Seattle, right.
All is well. I said I passed up well about 20 years ago. I'm spectacular.
All right. Come on. I love it. That is wonderful.
Woo, yes.
You know, I love your book, Sacred Self-Care and Pampering Principles for Women of Color. And actually, I'm using your book with the new program that I just launched on intentional self-care. And so I'm excited that we'll be going through your book in that program with the women who have registered for that program. And so
thank you for using
before we get into the juicy relationships part, let's talk a little bit about sacred self-care and what that means.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned my first national book, Sacred Pampering Principles, and it is shocking to me to realize that book has been out for 25 years, and I was only like 26 or 27 when I wrote the original paperback version of that book, and just where my mind was at such a young age. And so my own journey in relationship to being what I call a sacred self-caring woman has been elevating and evolving and up-leveling since then, right? Because it's ongoing.
Yeah.
And so when I started this journey, it really was about self-care as practices and prioritizing, care of our mind, care of our body, taking time for self, things that were at that time, late 90s, very leading edge for especially African-American women. But as I have continued to go deeper into this topic, I have come to what I call helping women have the sacred self-caring consciousness. So now it really is about a dimension or a level of belief and mindset that as a result, you practice self-care, not as something to have to remember to do, but it's built into how you roll.
Into who you are.
Right. But the consciousness, the sacred self-caring consciousness is really what my focus is these days. And sacred self-care, why did I put that word in front of it, right? Even 25 years ago, sacred self-care. Because it also takes the spirit into consideration. And you can't take the spirit into consideration without taking our creator into consideration. And you can't take our creator into consideration without talking about connection to our maker into consideration and care of the spirit. So that's one of the ways I kind of distinguish sacred self-care and also the sacred self-caring consciousness, and helping women to think from a different level and to see themselves in a completely different light. And then out of that naturally comes honoring behavior and wisely managing our energy and some of those other things that we talk about.
Yeah. And Debrena, with the whole idea of sacred really, really resonates with me. Most times when we think of sacred, of course, we think of the divine, we think of God, we think of the spirit, but very rarely do we think of ourselves as sacred.
Yeah.
And so,
unfortunately, yeah.
So when you say the sacred consciousness, that's so important, because if we don't think of ourselves as sacred, we won't engage in sacred self-care.
Right. Well, if we understand who we are,
Mm-hmm.
and if we understand what it means for real to be made in the image of,
Yeah.
we can't have a holy creator with the Holy Spirit. We're made in the image and we not be holy and we not be sacred and we not be divine. So it really becomes at the very base level when I talk about the sacred self-caring consciousness, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes about self-concept first of all. And many of us have a socially, family, generational, or cultural self concept. And we don't have our concept of self given to us by our maker. And that will have you twisted. And it does have us twisted. So, really, I could say that having a sacred self caring consciousness is really returning to a state of a renewed mind and the original mind and the mind of Christ. If we were using some scriptural language,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
some scriptural language in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that part of this journey to the consciousness of a sacred self-caring woman is, let's challenge your identity and who you thought you were, because in order to operate in this dimension, you got to elevate your concept of who you understand yourself to be.
And so in your work, how talk a little bit about how women get to that sacred consciousness, that sacred
Self-caring.
consciousness, because as you know, we get our identity from so many places. And oftentimes we get that from our family of origin, or we get it from relationships from childhood all the way to adulthood, from experiences, especially traumatic experiences, that sometimes shape our consciousness and our identity. So in order for women to come into this sacred consciousness, what have you seen has to happen, or what steps, or I don't like using steps, but what process do you think women we have to come through or go through in order to get to this place of sacred consciousness?
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely a journey and a process. And it's not just steps. It's more like levels or phases.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to unlearn and shed that's faulty and flawed and false.
Yes.
So that's why I don't go right to steps. Hold up. We're not even taking a step yet. We got about 50 extra coats of faulty programming, crazy beliefs, and a twisted self-concept that we got to take those coats off before we try to step forward and take a step. And Debrena, tell me how. And women always want to get to the how, because we're in this do-based culture. So we always want, well, tell me how, give me the steps. Don't take a step until you unload, till you unburden, till you unlearn some of this poisonous, toxic programming that has you stretched thin, spirit depleted, quietly stressed out, and overwhelmed, and caught in a hamster wheel of constant activity. So the first phase is really tell the truth about where you are, because a lot of times we want to position ourselves in our own minds as being further along or ahead than we really might be. So let's be truthful, and then let us unlearn some stuff, which is a detoxing process. Then we can talk about bringing in some new fresh water, right? And bringing in a new wineskin. Let's get rid of this old one, because I can't put the consciousness into the old wineskin, the old mindset. It'll burst it. So we got to, clean the slate and get women renewed. There's healing and forgiveness work involved, because as you said, we have allowed what has happened to our body, our experiences, to define us. And our identity is not given by our experiences. It's installed and given by the Creator. So when you start to identify with your experiences and the trauma, the situations that may have caused you trauma, which is the thing now, we're identifying with the trauma, our story. Careful about identifying with experiences, because then you will have a shaky self-concept.
Yeah.
So your identity doesn't change. Your experiences might shape your thinking or your personality or your emotional system, but your identity is unchanging because you don't determine your identity. The maker of you did. So
this is so good.
Yeah, so there's phases, right? Even in Juicy Women University, I had 7 levels of juiciness. So women would start to see the gradations. And at level 1, we are still struggling with, we have a self-concept of self-neglect and self-doubt and self-last and others always first and defer our vision and neglecting the body temple and always in constant perpetual motion. Okay, level 2, now you might take time out for yourself once in a while. You might feel guilty, but at least you're taking the time out because you're operating on old belief systems trying to just change behavior. It will render you feeling guilty if you have not cleaned out that which is causing the guilt to arise in the first place when you honor yourself. And so there's these levels, getting all the way up to level 5 and 6 and 7, where you are masterful at managing your energy, which is the framework of a sacred self-caring woman versus time, understanding what becomes more available to you in terms of spaciousness and a different experience of time when you manage your energy as your primary framework. So there's these levels of juiciness and phases in this process. And even myself, who am a transformational facilitator, I wrote the book on sacred self-care and brought the language into the language of, brought the terminology into the language for African-American women back in 93 when the book first came out, and then 97 when it came out nationally. When I created the levels of juiciness, I did not put myself at a level 7. I put myself at a level 6 so that I do not get comfortable or lazy or stop always refining and elevating my consciousness. So
that's so good. You said, and one of the things I remember when you came to Tea Time, you talked to us about not being ruled by our calendar, but checking with our energy and our purpose and all those things before we make decisions. And oftentimes, if someone asks us to do something, the first thing we check is our calendar to see if we are quote unquote available, but we haven't checked with our energy. That was so good. I'm telling you that I want you to know I have quoted you several times on that. And actually I've used it in my own renovation of my own consciousness. And I'm glad to hear you say that even though we've written books and we teach on this and we host podcasts, we are still constantly growing. We're still morphing into that image. We are still evolving into that woman, that juicy woman. We're still on that continuum.
Absolutely.
If you will. And so, we can't get lazy. We can't stop. We gotta, what Paul said, I press toward the mark. I continue to press toward that, not in a way that's work righteousness, but in a way where I'm constantly reaching for that image that I know God created when he had me in mind.
Yeah. And actually for me, I think of it as shedding all that is not consistent with the truth of my divine identity. So
say that again. Shedding.
The continual elevation is about continually shedding all that is not consistent with my divine identity.
Shedding. I'm going to say that again because somebody's listening and I don't want them to miss this. Shedding. You hear what she said? We must shed all that is not consistent with the divine image that God created.
Divine identity, yes.
Our divine identity.
Identity, yes. Yeah. So when we think about, the work, do your work, I think we think arduous. oh my God, I got to do my personal development work. Well, hold up. It doesn't have to be like carrying pushing a boulder up a hill. Calm down. But there is a constant shedding because we have taken on so many lies and faulty beliefs as part of the atmosphere of being socialized and being in the earth. So just to shed the lies, shed the faulty beliefs, that is part of the constant elevation process, because you become lighter as you shed things, correct?
Right.
And you emit more light, literally. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
so it's a joy. It is a joy and a delight that there are always higher levels in this human being that God created,
Yeah.
higher levels to evolve to, and higher levels of awakeness. And that keeps life exciting. You don't take a day for granted. You don't get lazy like I'm good, or you don't get arrogant. That's what we got to be careful of. I see a lot of arrogance going on.
Yeah.
Where you get a little insight, little wisdom, and then all of a sudden, the haters, oh my gosh, everyone can't go where you're going. Like, calm down until you can walk through walls, shapeshift, raise the dead, have the natural elements listen to you, restore sight to the blind, and restore ear to someone who was deaf from birth. Calm down.
You are not that wonderful.
We have some space to go in our awakeness.
Yeah, that is so good. Girl, that is so good. You are my sister from another mister. I'm telling you, I love it.
Oh, I love that, Toni.
So, yeah, that shedding. Ooh. That shedding, and often that shedding can be painful, because sometimes it causes us to look at things we don't want to look at and face things that we don't really want to face. But on the other side of it is so much joy, is so much peace. And I call it good pain, because there's a pain that we experience when we're hurting, and there's pain that we experience when we're healing. When you have surgery, there's pain that goes with it, but it's a different kind of pain than when you're injured.
Yeah.
It's a pain that leads to a healing rather than an injury. And so that shedding is so important. And if we can get women to, if all of us can submit to that process of shedding.
Yeah, because we've been running. Yeah, we've been running and we've been avoiding. And that's part of the breakdown in many different areas of life, bodies, love relationships, marriages, etc., mental, that we see on this side of the pandemic, because we have not been doing healing work.
No.
We have been doing relief work or change my emotional state in the moment work or awareness work, but that is not a synonym for healing work. And see, the body, once it heals, you go to surgery. If you had surgery, the stitches are taken out, the pain should leave. That's physical pain. But emotional and spiritual pain is different. Emotional pain will be present and felt every day if it's avoided. It doesn't subside. It just grows stale and stays in the corner like old milk in the refrigerator. So that's the difference. And we make up a lie that if I do my healing work, I'm going to have to address the pain. But we have been simmering in it daily. And dealing with it actually allows us to finally move it out of our system and stop simmering in it quietly every day
and adjusting to it and accommodating it.
All that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. When I my chiropractor, I use this analogy. I was teaching something recently and I referenced my chiropractor. When I first started seeing my chiropractor, I had suffered an injury in my right shoulder. And it was just from working out, not doing what I needed to do and lifting the proper way. And so when I went to my chiropractor, she asked me, was I in pain? And I said, no. And she said, you don't feel that? Because she, she did the scan of my spine, and it lights up the areas where if it's green, then everything is well. Then it goes from orange to yellow to red, and then to red. And red on this graph shows that you're in pain. And so she said, you don't feel that? And I said, no. And she said something that was interesting. She said, you're in pain, but you have learned to accommodate it.
Ooh. How about that?
Yeah.
And that happens emotionally too. But the thing is that accommodation over time manifests as dis-ease.
Yeah.
In our bodies.
Yes. Yes.
It does not go anywhere because we are acting like it's not there or have learned how to accommodate it.
Yep.
Cancer, fibroid, cysts, lupus, fibromyalgia, endometriosis, and the list goes on and on.
On and on.
Heart disease, obesity, it manifests through our body temple.
Yes.
Yes. Over time. Yes.
It does. Wow. So let's talk about this juicy relationships aspect. Come on. I couldn't wait to get to that part.
Well, they're interlinked. You know, when I wrote my relationships book, The Love Lies, which I never was interested in moving into the relationships arena, but God had a different plan after my own marriage went through a very, very shaky period, almost crashed, burned, and ended. And we were able to not just save our marriage, but to restore and transform it into what I now call a juicy marriage. Okay. And so I don't teach women about being happy. That can be based upon external circumstances, what another does or doesn't do, while juicy is the next level beyond happy. And how you support having a juicy relationship is you come into it as a juicy woman, or you elevate to being a juicy woman where your spirit is full, your heart is open, you've done your healing work, where you know how to manage your energy, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's really what I focus on.
So your definition of a juicy woman is where your spirit is, say those.
So there are some baselines. Okay. Because there's a whole set of beliefs that a juicy woman lives from. There are a whole set of practices and spiritual principles. But in terms of some of her baseline, one is that her mind is clear. You know, we hear the phrase, oh, I can't think straight. A lot of us, our mind is fuzzy, crooked, hence the word think straight, overstimulated with all of the inputs coming in. Yeah. So she has a clear mind and she knows how to keep it clear and has set up her life for it to be clear and has tools and aids and whatever else she needs so that she stays thinking clearly and thus makes good and wise decisions instead of reactive decisions out of fear, desperation, all the different other reasons that we can make the choices we make. She has a well body, and that is defined as free of pain, free of dis-ease, and free of pharmaceuticals and medications, including Pepto-Bismol, Rolaids, the stuff that now has become commonplace in our culture. And a caveat to a well body is that her relationship with her body has elevated from her body as something to take care of and tend to being a divine living temple, as it tells us several times in Corinthians in scripture. And then she has a full spirit. This is a real critical one because we are not taught how to tend to and nourish and be caretakers of our spirit. We've just learned how to start taking care of our bodies and our minds in the last decade. And so spirit care is different from body and mind care. Yes. So one of the characteristics of a healthy spirit is it's full. And what is it full with? Joy. How is that possible? Because it's connected to joy within and the source of joy, which is the creator. So many of us, our spirit is depleted. It's got holes in it. It's leaking. So a full spirit, and even getting to that full state, is a conscious and intentional process of sacred self-care, sacred prayer and meditation, speaking to and hearing from, speaking to and hearing from. Then with regard to energy, you talked about it earlier, that the focus of a sacred self-caring woman isn't time. Time is actually secondary, and primary is wisely managing her energy. Where, how, with whom, and on what is she investing it? And setting her life up so that she has constant renewal taking place. You know, people often say, oh, Debrena, I know after you get done with this project, you probably need to take a break and, you know, just rest. I said, oh, no, it's not an event. Rest is not an event at the end of an intensive period. I set up how I even go about it so that my energy is managed wisely. And there's always rejuvenation cycles and how I even structure my approach to it. They're like, what? I said, so this grind and then self-care. No, that's a 101 level. Hey, we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
We want to get you to operating from a framework of how your energy is moving in and out of your life and your body and your emotions, and making decisions with that as a consideration, not just is it available in my calendar.
Yeah.
And then the last baseline is heart, open heart. And we use that word open, and being open, but a lot of us are not open. We're partially closed. We're almost closed all the way. We're defensive. We're protective. We're distrusting. And our hearts are not open, especially in our love relationships and in our marriages. So those are baselines for a sacred self-caring woman. Those could be considered, if this was a compass, the 5 North Stars of a sacred self-caring woman. But there's a lot of layers to it. But that is, you know, some kind of, you know, boxes for those who like boxes. So there's 5 orientations around mind, body, spirit, heart, and energy that are foundational for a sacred self-caring woman.
Wow. So this Juicy Relationships, you have a Love Academy coming up. I want to put that information up there because I want them to know where they can find you. So Debrena is the founder. We're talking to Debrena Jackson Gandy. We're talking about sacred self-care and juicy relationships. She is the founder of the Love Academy, and she actually has a Love Academy coming up very soon on Saturday, February 11th. And there is a coupon there. You can go to her website, or you can go to the bit.ly link and register. Use the coupon LA101-23. I'm going to repeat that for those who are listening and may not be on YouTube with us. And if you're not on YouTube with us, go over to my YouTube channel so you can see this information on the screen, write it down, and subscribe to my YouTube channel while you're there. So use the coupon code LA101-23 and enter it at the checkout. And the link to register is the bit.ly link /LA101-23 Love Academy 101. I imagine that's what LA is.
Yeah, LA101-2023. Yep, /23.
LA101-2023. Go to the register at the bit.ly bit.ly/LA101-23. And if you're on 2023, I'm sorry, 2023, right? Or did I do that wrong?
/LA101-2023.
Yep. LA101-2023. All right.
Ding, ding, ding.
And if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see it written there. Okay. And that's just for those who are listening to us on Spotify, on Anchor, on Google, on Apple Podcasts. And so we know some of our listeners listen while they're walking in the park or whatever, or while they're around the house. And then there are others who like to veg out on YouTube with me. And so go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not done so, at Dr. Toni G. Alvarado, and you can find this information there on my YouTube channel. You'll find this whole episode there on my YouTube channel. And while you're there, subscribe and share. Subscribe and share this conversation with Debrena Jackson Gandy, with those that you love. All right, from the Love Academy, from the founder of the Love Academy. All right, Debrena. So let me ask you this: how can people connect with you if they want to be a part of not just the Love Academy, but your Juicy Woman? Are you still doing the Juicy Woman program?
Well, the Love Academy virtual happens only once a year now. So that's the first thing, because once a year and then you can't get it again.
Okay.
And it's all about introducing women to a new paradigm for love, relationships, and marriage, because we have veered from, for example, the original design of marriage, which supports freedom and full self-expression based on the divine design laid out in Scripture. So we have veered off from that, and we're doing something else, and having deplorable outcomes in our marriages and very bad outcomes in our non-marriage love relationships. So Love Academy once a year, there's that. And that's February 11th.
Is this men and women in the Love Academy?
Women only. I have a whole separate relationship seminar for men only. This is for women only, once a year. Oh, and then you asked about Juicy Woman University, and that is actually one of my signature programs, 12-month life transformation program that I did for 5 years, and it ended last year. So now I have my brand new Life Lab membership. So that is the next iteration of how to get ushered into the foundational teachings around living as a sacred, self-caring woman. And the Life Lab membership is on my website, but for the Love Academy, they have to go to that bit.ly link so they can use that coupon code.
Go to that bit.ly
link. Get it for free and waive the fee with the coupon code.
All right, get in for free and waive the fee. Get in this week and waive the fee. Now listen, go to her website as well. I want to give them your website at milliondollarmentor.net so they can connect with you there. That's the milliondollarmentor.net. You can find Debrena on Facebook at Debrena Jackson Gandy. You can find her on Instagram at the Debrena. Also on Twitter at the Debrena. She has a YouTube channel, Debrena Jackson Gandy, and you can also find her on LinkedIn at Debrena Jackson Gandy. Get her books. Go on Amazon. I have 2 of her books. Oh. I have the Love Lies, and I have the Sacred Pampering Principles. And so I'm so excited. And as I stated, I'll be walking through that book, the Sacred Pampering Principles. We'll be using in our program that we just launched, the Intentional Self-Care program, Dr. Toni Alvarado's Intentional Self-Care program. I'm putting that up there as well, so you can go to my website or email me at hello@drtonialvarado.com, and I will send you the information on how you can become, how you can register for that program at the Intentional Self-Care program, and how you can be, you can also go to my website at drtonialvarado.com and sign up for the Harmonize Your Life Women's Self-Care Network. We bring in women like Debrena. Last year, or year before last, in 2021, we brought Debrena into Tea Time with Dr. Toni. And Debrena, I'm going to have to bring you back because they're asking already, when are we bringing Debrena again? So I got to bring you back. But join the Harmonize Your Life Women's Self-Care Network. Ladies, go to my website and join the Harmonize Your Life Women's Self-Care Network so that you can connect with women like myself, like Debrena, and others who are juicy women, all right, who are on that continuum. And we are in that flow of becoming the image and walking out that image that we were created to be, our identity finding our identity, not in our circumstances, in our what we've gone through, in our the pain and struggles or traumatic events of life, and not even in our successes, because sometimes we find our identity in those places as well. So it's not always the traumatic events, but sometimes it's even our success. We find our identity in that. And when we're no longer doing those things, when I'm no longer the CEO, when I'm no longer raising these wonderful children, or when God forbid, my husband passes away and all of a sudden I'm not married anymore, or I go through the divorce, whatever, we find our identity in so many ways outside of finding our identity in Christ. And so join up with the Self-Care Network. Follow Debrena. Check out the work that she is doing. Become a part. Invest in your sacred self-care and your juicy womanness.
Well said.
Debrena, will you give us one last word of encouragement as we prepare to sign off?
Woo! You know, it's about elevation, because we've been, operating at a certain level, and the pandemic was a global wake-up call that we are to leave that level of functioning, thinking, believing, self-concept behind, and we're to elevate, ascend, and level up. It's the level up season. New altitudes, new levels of consciousness. So that's what's up in 2023.
Oh, it's the level up season. I love that. It's the level up season. We are leveling up our attitudes and our sense of consciousness this year. Thank you so much, my sister. I appreciate the connection through our common sister, Beverly Gibson.
Yes.
Thank God for her connecting us and our common destiny and our common work. I appreciate you and your friendship and your juiciness.
Thank you. Thank you, beautiful Toni.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to end our conversation with Debrena this time right here. We'll just put a pin in it and continue this dialogue. Stay with us in the Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast, as we have as you can see, new and exciting. We're leveling up our consciousness with new episodes this year, and you don't want to miss any of it. All right. We'll see you soon.